Deep Work is the second best book that I've read this year, close to being as good as Atomic Habits. I'd give it a 9.5 out of 10. The book introduces the concept of deep work and its undeniable benefits. The book is written with clear examples and citations, and it provides the guidelines to living a fulfilling and productive life. One of the most essential parts of the book is pointing out the practices that we have that inhibit us from being able to perform deep work. In many ways, it is a wake-up call to what brings meaning to our lives. My favourite quote from the book is, "Attention, what you choose to focus on and what you choose not to focus on, plays the role of defining the quality of our lives." Timestamps for all the chapters covers can be found in the description or on the side if you're on a desktop and you click down below. Deep work is defined as professional activities performed in a state of distraction-free concentration that push your cognitive capabilities to their limit. These efforts create new value, improve your skill, and are hard to replicate. The definition of shallow work, by contrast, is non-cognitively demanding, logistical-style tasks often performed while distracted. These efforts tend not to create much new value in the world and are easy to replicate. So, the deep work hypothesis is that the ability to perform deep work is becoming increasingly rare. At exactly the same time, it is becoming increasingly valuable in our economy. As a consequence, the few who cultivate the skill and then make it the core of their working life will thrive. Chapter 1. Deep work is valuable. In our new economy, 3 groups of people will have a particular advantage. Those who work well and creatively with intelligent machines, those who are the best at what they do, and those with access to capital. I don't expect to have access to capital or be the best at what I do, so I've got to learn how to work creatively with machines. 2 core abilities for thriving in the new economy. The ability to quickly master hard things and the ability to produce at an elite level in terms of both quality and speed. As mentioned in my previous video, deliberate practice is necessary to thrive. This requires having your attention tightly focused on a specific skill that you're trying to improve or an idea that you're trying to master, and you receive feedback so you can correct your approach to keep your attention exactly where it's most productive. The emphasis is that deliberate practice cannot exist alongside distraction, and it requires uninterrupted concentration. If you're trying to learn a complex new skill in an environment with a lot of distraction, for example, you're often checking social media, you're firing off too many neurons at the same time and you're not concentrating your efforts onto one group of neurons that you're trying to strengthen. Chapter 2. Deep work is rare. The principle of least resistance. In a business setting, without clear feedback on the impact of various behaviours to the bottom line, we will tend towards behaviours that are the easiest in the moment and not the most productive in the long run. Busyness as proxy for productivity. In the absence of clear indicators of what it means to be productive and valuable in their jobs, many knowledge workers turn back towards an industrial indicator of productivity, doing lots of things, like checking emails, in a visible manner to seem busy. Chapter 3. Deep work is meaningful. A deep life is not just lucrative economically, but it's also a life well lived. There's a sense of gravity and importance inherent in deep work. If you spend enough time doing deep work, you will start perceiving the world as rich in importance and meaning. The idle mind is the devil's workshop. When you lose focus, your mind tends to fixate on what could be going wrong in your life and not what's going right. Humans are at their best when they are fully immersed in something challenging. The task of a craftsman is not to create meaning, but to cultivate the skill within himself to be able to find the meaning that's already there. This frees him from nihilism. For example, a woodworker. When they are carving wood, they are not creating meaning, but instead trying to find a meaning that already exists within the wood. Any pursuit, be it physical or cognitive, that generates high levels of skill, can generate a sense of sacredness. To quote Winifred Gallagher, "I'll live the focused life because it's the best kind there is. A deep life is a good life any way that you look at it." Rule 1. Work deeply. People fight desires all day long. You have a finite amount of willpower that gets depleted as you use it, kind of like a muscle that tires. The key to developing a good work habit is to go beyond just intention, and to add routines and rituals to your working life, designed to minimize the amount of your limited willpower necessary to transition into a state of unbroken concentration and to maintain it. For example, after spending an afternoon browsing social media, being distracted, when you try to put your focus onto a task that's important, you're going to have a very hard time and you're going to struggle with it because you've got a limited amount of willpower to be able to do so. Decide on your depth philosophy. A novice will be able to perform deep work maybe around 1 hour a day, but someone who's a lot more practiced will probably be able to do around 4 hours, but rarely more. The book presents 4 different philosophies that you could use to apply deep work into your life. There's the monastic philosophy. An example of this would be a sci-fi writer. Because it is their job and their whole living and career to make one thing, to write, they don't need to worry too much about shallow work or the tasks like reading emails. What they need to do to succeed is to focus weeks on end on one thing. And so what they can do is choose to solely work deeply and to leave all other options of work outside of it. Many people who do this sort of work don't even have an email address where you can contact them with. The bimodal philosophy of deep work. Someone like Carl Jung, who used to have intense periods where he would go to his home near the lake and he would be isolated from the rest of the world and he would focus for days on end on something that he needs to get done. He was writing psychology and competing with Freud, so it was important to him. But then he would also go to the city where he would be able to attend coffee house and he would be able to attend his clients, form clinical practices for his psychology. So this lifestyle, as opposed to the monastic style, instead of having weeks on end only focused on one thing, you will have stretches of days dedicated to one thing and then stretches of days dedicated to not so intensely deep work. Then there's the rhythmic philosophy of deep work. This is a great style of deep work because it removes the necessity for you to decide if or when you're going to work. You already know when, you already know where, it's just a matter of doing it. And if you choose the same hours each day to do it, it can really build into your brain. An easy way to motivate yourself to do the rhythmic kind of work is to mark X's on your calendar, as mentioned in my previous video. You will eventually have a chain of X's that you won't want to break and you'll want to keep it going. And finally, there's the journalistic philosophy of performing deep work. This is based on the idea that journalists have to enter writing mode at a moment's notice. This is not easy for people to do at first, and it requires a lot of practice beforehand of being able to enter a state of deep work. But once you've practiced it, whenever you have a little bit of free time in your day, you can suddenly turn into that mode where you are performing deep work. There is a popular notion that artists only work when they feel inspired, but what many successful people say is that you should ignore that and instead that you should try to do work every single day whether you're feeling inspired or not. Another way to keep track of whether you're making good progress as you're performing the work is to track something like your words per minute. If you're writing X amount of words in about a 20-minute window, you can know whether you are concentrating well enough or not. By changing your normal environment and investing a lot of effort or even money into whatever you're trying to do will give a great sense of importance to the deep work that you're trying to complete. The dominant force in deep work is the psychology behind it and how much importance you are giving to the time that you are spending trying to perform it. An example of this would be when J.K. Rowling was writing the final book of the Harry Potter series, she was struggling to concentrate when she was at home. So what she decided to do was to book an expensive hotel in Edinburgh, near the Edinburgh Castle. And this hotel was expensive, it cost over £1,000 a night to stay there. So there was a financial incentive for her to finish the book on time in this place where she managed to concentrate better because it was free from distraction. So there was the importance of needing to get the book done, she was putting money down, and she had an environment where she could focus. So sometimes creating the right environment is the most important thing. Some deep work tasks you can work alongside another person with to complete it. And this feedback between one person and the other is really fantastic for getting to deeper levels of deep work. But again, it depends on what you're trying to achieve. Execute like a business by using the 4DX framework. This is based on the fundamental premise that executing is more difficult than strategizing. The 4 disciplines of the 4DX framework are: focus on a small number of wildly important goals, act on the lead measures, keep a compelling scoreboard, and create a cadence of accountability. In terms of the compelling scoreboard, the individual scoreboard should be a physical artifact in the workplace that displays the individual's current deep work hour count. Quoting the author of this book, by using a simple tally of tick marks in a week's row, it firstly allowed me to accumulate deep work hours, and secondly, it helped me calibrate my expectations for how many hours of deep work were needed per result. And in terms of discipline 4, creating a cadence of accountability, to quote the author again, I used a weekly review to look over my scoreboard to celebrate good weeks, help understand what led to bad weeks, and most important, figure out how to ensure a good score for the days ahead. So in contrast to explaining the importance of deep work, I need to present the importance of idleness. Idleness is as important to your brain as vitamin D is to your body. Regularly resting your brain allows you to perform even better deep work. Here are a few reasons why. Trying to squeeze a little more work out of your evenings can reduce your effectiveness the next day, to the point where you end up getting less done than if you had instead respected a shutdown. Once you complete your workday, you cannot allow professional concerns into your field of attention. To achieve this, you must use the shutdown ritual at the end of your workday. This process is a series of steps you always conduct one after another, and when you're done, you finish by saying shut down complete. It takes a week or two before this habit sticks, but once it does, the ritual becomes a positive change in your life. An example would be, if you have tasks you know you need to complete another day, write them down in your calendar so you know you won't miss them, and then say shut down complete so you can rest without stressing about work. Rule 2. Embrace boredom. Efforts to deepen your focus will struggle if you don't remove from your mind the dependence on distractions. This is such an important aspect that we need to realize. Constant attention switching online has a lasting negative effect on your brain. You must overcome your desire for distraction. Schedule in advance when you're going to use the internet and then avoid it outside of these times. The use of a distracting service does not reduce your brain's ability to focus. It's instead constantly switching from low stimuli activities like work to high stimuli activities like browsing social media at the slightest hint of boredom or cognitive challenge that teaches your mind to never tolerate an absence of novelty. This is one of my favorite highlights from the book. Constantly switching from low stimuli activities like work to high stimuli activities like browsing social media at the slightest hint of boredom or cognitive challenge teaches your mind to never tolerate an absence of novelty. By minimizing the number of times you give in to distraction, you let your attention selecting muscles strengthen. The total number of your offline blocks or the length of them doesn't matter as much as the integrity of your work blocks. As soon as you start letting distractions enter your work blocks, then the difference between a work block or a distraction block is going to become permeable and you'll stop having the effects. To summarize, to succeed with deep work, you must rewire your brain to be comfortable resisting distracting stimuli. This means that you don't have to eliminate distracting behaviors. It's sufficient that you eliminate the ability for these behaviors to hijack your attention. The simple strategy of scheduling internet blocks goes a long way towards helping you regain your attention autonomy. Identify a deep task and estimate how long you would normally spend trying to complete this task, and then reduce the hours drastically. Try to make it so that it's probably just about achievable, that you'll just be able to make it, or if you don't make it, that you'll almost be able to make it in this reduced amount of time. Reason to do this, and you should do this a few times a week, is to really start strengthening those moments of deep concentration. A good way to help structure your mind for deep thinking is to identify the variables that you need to keep in mind, put these into your working memory, and then define the question that you're trying to answer with these variables. Rule 3 is to quit social media. You should be more strict on allowing a social media to your time, your attention, and even your personal data. If you don't weigh the pros and cons of using a social media app, and instead you use the any benefit approach, which says if there's any reason to use this social media, then I should use it, then you're going to let these social medias take over your life. Instead of using the any benefit approach to why you would use these network tools, you should be instead using the craftsman approach. If you identify the core factors of what brings meaning to your professional and to your personal life, then you should only use the tools that really help build towards this. Instead of just identifying any reason to use social media, you should focus specifically on what it is that you want in your life and then ask yourself whether social media helps you towards that or not. By using the craftsman approach, you can apply the rule of the vital few. This rule, also known as the Pareto principle, states that 80% of the results that you get is completed with only 20% of the tools that you use. Once you've identified on a high level what it is that you're trying to achieve and what the main steps you can take towards it are, if you decide to just use the 20% of tools that give you 80% of the results, then you are strengthening those deep work muscles in your mind. Quit social media, you should probably just quit it. Don't use the internet to mindlessly entertain yourself. If instead you plan how you're going to spend your resting time in the evenings and at the weekend by doing something that you find fulfilling and productive, you will reach the end of your day feeling much more fulfilled than if you just spent 4 hours just mindlessly browsing the internet. And rule 4 is drain the shallows. Schedule every minute of your day. This isn't to constrain yourself. This is so you can ask yourself at multiple points throughout the day, what is the most important thing or most productive thing that I could be doing right now? Just asking yourself this question regularly will strengthen those muscles in your mind. Instead of allowing yourself to be distracted or entertained by things that don't bring that sort of fulfillment or meaning in your life, when you ask yourself what's the most important thing I could be doing right now, you actually will get to the end of the day thinking, wow, I'm glad I did all those things that I recognized were important. A deep work habit requires that you treat your time with respect. If you had to choose just one habit from everything that I talked about today to apply into your life to potentially be able to improve on deep work, it would be to schedule your time. If you have a fixed schedule and you know exactly what you should be doing at every moment, then you will put yourself on the path to living a more fulfilling life. To conclude, depth generates a life rich in meaning. To quote Winifred Gallagher once again, "I'll live the focused life because it's the best life there is." Thank you for watching.